Hello and welcome to the podcast that is less Emil Smith-Rowe and more Emil Heskey. It's the big man up top.
Yes, it is. Oh, I love that, Ed.
Emil Heskey, what a player he was, by the way.
Amazing.
Do you remember much about Emil Heskey?
A little bit before my time.
A little bit before your time.
Got the back end of him. Do you remember when he moved to Newcastle Jets, didn't he?
He did.
And they did a whole Heskey cam. You could just watch the whole game watching Emil Heskey.
I don't remember that.
What a treat that was.
What a treat that was. We love Emil Heskey here on the big man up top.
We do, but we also do love Emil Smith-Rowe, do we?
Do we?
I think
He's in my fantasy team. He's doing okay.
I enjoy watching him.
Yeah. Fulham is a much better place for him. You know, to be getting his games week in, week out.
Well, Fulham seem to be Arsenal 2.0, don't they?
A little bit.
Just if you can't make the Arsenal starting 11, just go to Fulham.
Anyway, how are you doing, Jay? Doing all right?
Yeah, I'm good, Ed. Another weekend of football to watch.
Loads of goals, particularly, and we're going to come on to a roundup of the weekend's activity in a bit.
Yeah, we were on the radio, weren't we?
We were.
That was a bit of fun.
Goodness me, yes. We were on UCB2 talking to Ruth about this podcast.
They had a gap to fill.
We
were more than willing to.
We were sort of just floating around the office talking about football anyway.
Yeah.
And we were dragged into the studio.
We were, and we were asked at the end, do we want to play a song? We had a bit of deliberation, didn't we?
Yeah, because I really wanted Abide With Me.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm thinking, like, let's play a song, let's play a UCB2 worship song that is about football, and that is a very, very narrow window.
Bit of a niche.
I thought Abide With Me, you know, FA Cup final song, really great. Turns out not on the playlist.
We don't have it.
Instead, we had to settle for The Lord Is My Shepherd.
West Brom. Which,
as a Stoke fan, I can't believe I said that, but, you know, let's go with it. We're going to start with some trivia, aren't we?
We are, yes. This is the part of the podcast where we test each other's footballing brains with a difference. It is Guess the Player. I will ask Ed a question. The answer to that question will be a footballer's name. Their first name will share the name of a book in the Bible.
How exciting.
Very exciting. How are you feeling this week, Ed?
Well, I'm not good at this in general. This is episode 9 of the podcast, and it's just become very painfully apparent that you're quite good at this and I'm not. You know, I feel like I've had easier questions and I've only got one right.
Sure.
I actually think that I can do this. I think I just panic in the moment.
You're saying that you're going to give yourself a bit more time this week.
I'm going to make sure that I just calm down.
Yeah.
You know, just like Anthony Gordon and his penalty process, I'm going to take a moment.
And look how that went.
Exactly. So let's go.
According to SofaScore, you know SofaScore?
I do not know.
Well, SofaScore is a stats platform.
Okay, fine. I trust them.
Bit of a live score situation.
I trust them. Yeah,
anyway,
that's fine.
According to SofaScore, which defender won the most aerial duels last season in the Premier League? Which defender won the most aerial duels last season in the Premier League?
Oh, my goodness. Okay. So we had Dan Burn.
Yeah. Is it going to be a double Dan Burn situation?
Well, it feels like an unwritten rule that we can't have double Dan Burn.
Well, we haven't discussed whether we can have double Dan Burn or not.
I'll be so annoyed if it is Dan Burn because I'm not going for Dan Burn.
You're not going for Dan Burn?
On the back.
He's a tall boy.
He's a very tall boy, but I'm not going for Dan Burn for that reason. So here's my thought process.
Go on.
I'm thinking a team that is going to be under the cosh quite a lot.
Sure.
But I'm also thinking a good defender. I am thinking a centre-back.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to go for Mark Gahey.
Okay, I like that.
I'll have to think it through, though, as to whether I want to lock in.
Yeah, I don't have to accept your answer now, do I?
No, please don't. No,
I'll give you a bit more time to have a think.
Okay, wonderful. We've had some correspondence, Joe.
Some more?
I know, we love it when people
are listening.
People are listening,
wow.
They're getting in touch, that they're enjoying the podcast. We've had an email from Lizzie who says, "Hey guys, absolutely loving the pod." Loving is in capital letters, so I do believe her. My one gripe would be your guest last week, Joel Brown. Not that he was the gripe, but the gripe came from none other than Joe Rivers when he claimed Chelsea would be in a, quote, title race. Guarantee they've lost to Forest 2-1 this week. Also, can we talk about when City will go away, please? Cheers. Keep up the great work. Lizzie, hashtag come on you Gunners, hashtag North London is red, hashtag North London forever.
So Lizzie's an Arsenal fan.
I think she's an Arsenal fan.
Okay, interesting.
So we can ignore the point about City because she's just, sour
Bitter.
grapes. Yeah, bitter, exactly. Now, what do we make of that, that Chelsea would be in a title race? And particularly, she says, guarantee they've lost to Forest 2-1 this week. I feel like she was not far off there.
She wasn't far off. It took a bit of a wonder save from Robert Sanchez, I believe, to stop that happening. I did say Chelsea title race in the same sentence.
I would like to nail my colours to the mast here and said I was firmly in the camp of I do not see this coming.
No,
at
it's
all.
interesting.
So justify it, please, Joe.
Oh, I just think they've got a nice little squad now.
I look at this Chelsea team and think, yeah, some great players, but it feels like it's still relying an awful lot on Cole Palmer.
Oh, very much so.
And if you strangle him out the game, not literally, if you take him out the game, then
it's a struggle.
But
so many teams are like that. Look at City without Rodri. They're barely scraping by.
Maybe. One team that's been scraping by is Liverpool, Joe.
Scraping by, that's an interesting phrase.
What did you make of the Palace-Liverpool game?
What I would say about this weekend is I watched 4 football games live because I had no plans at all. 3 of them were absolute dirt. One of which was Liverpool Crystal Palace. Yeah. Just boring.
But you don't mind that if you're supporting one of the teams, you don't mind. Like,
not at all.
If they go on to win 1-0 in a terribly boring game, you don't actually mind, do you?
Look, it's ugly wins.
That's
all you can ask for. So a win is a win.
Tell me about the other terrible games you watched.
Well, the other terrible games I watched were Aston Villa against Manchester United yesterday, and the commentator made a comment that we could be playing for another 20 minutes and not have a goal, and it very much felt like that. Yeah,
I felt like Villa Man United, it was a little bit inevitable because Villa had a massive night in Europe in the week. Their players were always going to be a bit leggy. United have just been a bit hit and miss anyway. I thought it was interesting, that for me, that summed up United's whole torrid time at the moment in that one game. You had players like Rashford and Antony basically showing flashes of what they can do, showing a few really exciting moments, but then also in the same breath showing things like not tracking back, and Rashford with his sort of petulance towards the end, very, very lucky to stay on the pitch.
Yeah.
And the thing is if United are going to turn things around, if they are going to start to turn the corner and become the club that they all think they can be, they need Rashford, Fernandes, all of those players to be absolutely superb every week. They haven't got a squad that's good enough that can allow passengers. They need to actually turn up, and they need to turn up consistently.
I'm not sure what needs to happen at United because I think, there's issues in the midfield there. But that shouldn't mean that players like Rashford, Garnacho, Højlund, Xerxes, Antony, it shouldn't mean that they are out of form, you could be forgiven if they're scoring goals, if they're looking exciting going forward, but there's holes in the midfield. You can be forgiven for that. What I would say, though, yesterday it felt like they had a plan. It felt like Erik ten Hag had a plan to set up against Villa, which we've not seen a lot of recently.
And there's a whole thing as well with ten Hag, obviously going into the international break. I even think they mentioned it on Match of the Day about, is he still going to be the manager after the international break? And so I guess we'll see. Man City, Fulham. I thought Fulham turned up.
They were great.
Yeah, they looked really, really good.
If only Adama Traore could finish.
Bless him. It's bizarre. I haven't seen a player like that for a long while, where he's clearly a good player. Don't get me wrong. And, obviously all relative compared to me.
Yeah.
And you,
I
Joe.
think you could have finished one of them chances.
Well, yeah.
It's just whether you could outpace Kyle Walker.
He's very, very quick, and he's got so many other good attributes, but he just cannot finish. And to the point where at a certain point you go, okay, we need to have somebody in the team who can score those. But then I can imagine fans would go, well, at least he's getting in those positions.
Well, exactly,
and some of them will go in eventually.
It's the law of averages, isn't it? He also covers himself in oil, doesn't he? Did you know this?
Does he really?
I don't know if he still does this.
Oh, gosh.
But I remember when he was in his peak at Wolves, you'd see him covering his arms in baby oil because it just means he can slip away.
He can slip. Oh no!
Horrible. Yeah, but that's his tactic.
Another game, Leicester-Bournemouth.
Yes.
So I particularly enjoyed my good friend Facundo Buonanotte.
You're a big fan of him, aren't you?
He's not my friend. I do not know him. But I just love his name.
Yeah.
I just love his name. Good night.
Good night.
Buonanotte. He's such a big part of what's good about Leicester at the moment. And to be honest, they have been a bit sluggish. I feel like they really need to start pushing on now. You know, they are a much better team under Steve Cooper than they've actually been performing, than they've been showing us, I think.
Sure. Because a lot of Leicester fans are calling for his sacking already. He's not the most popular figure there.
No, but I do think that fans quickly get over managerial issues if you start to rack up some points. And I think they are a better team than what they're showing.
But this was the first win this season from a promoted team. Bear in mind we're game week 8, so there's been 21 games involving them so far, and this is the first win. This similar thing happened last season. It was match day 7 before, I think, was it Luton won a game, the first promoted team? I can't quite remember. But I feel like this is becoming a bit more common. I don't feel like this has always been the case.
Back in the early days of the Premier League, it was the case. Probably the first 10 years or so, teams would come up and they would basically expect to get relegated. But I think now we're starting to go back into that stage where teams they come up and they find it difficult. They're all playing the same kind of football, just not to the standard that they're playing in the Premier League.
And I think that's something we're seeing a lot more. We spoke recently about the way Burnley came up, the way Southampton have come up and stuck to the way they're playing. Obviously with Leicester they've had a change of management, so that's not been possible. But even 3 or 4 years ago, Brentford's first game in the Premier League, they beat Arsenal 2-0. Now, it was a very different Arsenal side at the time. Still Mikel Arteta in charge.
Yeah.
But you just can't imagine that happening this season straight away, can you?
Yeah.
Brighton played Tottenham yesterday.
Oh, now what a game this was.
So good.
2-0 down, winning 3-2. I love a good 2-goal comeback, Joe.
It's the most dangerous scoreline.
It's the most dangerous score. Can you remember a particular comeback that you enjoyed?
I remember more hurtful comebacks than joyful ones. Let me take you back, Ed.
Okay.
To Pancake Day.
Sorry, what?
Liverpool played Real Madrid.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember this in the Champions League.
Not particularly well, no.
We had some friends over for Pancake Day, and we watched the first 15 minutes of this game. Liverpool went 2-0 up, and at that point we had to stop watching the game for pancakes. Of course.
Did you not just keep it on in the background? Or?
No, there was a lot going on. You know, our house is big on Pancake Day.
Is it?
So we stop at 2-0. I'm avoiding the score.
Yeah.
And then later on, I'm like, I've avoided the score. I'm going to sit down and watch the rest of the game, thinking we're 2-0 up against Real Madrid.
Yeah.
And my friend pulled me to the side. He'd seen what the score was and was like, mate, don't do this to yourself. And I was like, oh no, but I want to watch it. Like, we're 2-0 up. And he said, no, go upstairs, check the score. And I did. And it said 5-2 to Real Madrid. I was devastated. And I came downstairs. My wife was there. And
consoling you. Well,
this was simultaneously the proudest moment and the saddest moment, because she said, well, you know, 2-0 is the most dangerous score. I was like, I regret telling you about that.
Oh, that is fantastic.
How about you? Have you privy to a comeback?
Along the same lines of disappointments, they seem to stick in the memory more.
I think they do.
So I went to university in Preston, and so whenever Stoke were playing Preston at Deepdale, I would go and sit in the home end. And one of them, Stoke, went 2-0 up. I'm getting these facts wrong, but something like after about 20 minutes.
Sure.
They were 2-0 up. Coasting, shall we say, coasting. And then Stoke ended up losing 3-2. And the third goal coming in the last minute. And what was funny was me and a friend who was another Stoke fan who was there, we'd watched the whole game with our sort of hands underneath our bums to sort of not cheer when Stoke had scored. But obviously we'd been loud enough that when the third goal went in, and they were chanting, "You're not singing anymore," to the away fans. All the home fans around us turned to me and my friend and started pointing at us and chanting, "You're not singing anymore."
How embarrassing.
And we took it well, but
I'm sure you did.
yeah, it was. I remember that one quite vividly.
Those things stay with you. Everton against Newcastle.
Okay, talk me through that one.
Again, just nothing happened. Obviously, the penalty incident, which we'll come on to, was the most exciting thing about the whole game.
Yeah.
Taken by Anthony Gordon. He's been at Everton for a while. He was there for about 10 years, I think. Almost this boyhood club whole story. Signed for Newcastle a couple of seasons ago for £40 million. Comes back to Everton.
He didn't leave on the best of terms, which is always a shame.
He didn't. He
isn't it?
tried. He did force the move.
Yeah.
Which is difficult. If this is your club and this is someone that you love, someone that's been at your club for ages, and they force a move, it's hard to take.
Yeah. But I think that Anthony Gordon had the chance to very much silence the home fans, didn't he?
Yes, that's right. He had a penalty just at the end of the first half. And he really took his time over it, didn't he?
Yeah, he has his process, doesn't he?
He has his whole meditation process that he goes through. Ultimately, he gets saved. And look, Goodison Park isn't the nicest place to go. It's quite renowned for its booing. But they were trying to put him off. When he missed the penalty, the biggest cheer I've heard from Goodison Park this season.
It was a roar, wasn't it? You know, and I wanted to have a discussion about this, about the sort of the attitude towards Gordon from the Everton fans, and I'm not in any way criticising the Everton fans. I think a lot of this is part of the game. But I felt like when he missed that penalty, there was a moment where it felt like it was teetering on getting nasty.
Yeah.
What do you think of that sort of behaviour or those moments in
Well, I
games?
think it's a fine line, isn't it? This is part of football. This is the pantomime of football, like you said. But it's quite a fine line, I think, between joining in, jeering, putting a player off because you don't want him to score a goal, but also getting into that criticism, personal attack.
This was for me the moment where you could tell it had gone too far. Was the moment immediately after Pickford makes the save in the penalty, and it was an Everton player, I think it might have been Decore, sort of ran to celebrate with Pickford. He ran over, but he was cheering very loudly right next to him. And it reminded me an awful lot, actually, of a game a long while ago, Arsenal versus Man United at Old Trafford. I believe they might have even called it the Battle of Old Trafford or something. Okay. It was a nickname because it was really feisty. It was Keane and Vieira at their most aggressive. It was when United and Arsenal were at each other's throats every time. And in this particular game, there was a moment where Van Nistelrooy had won a penalty and him and Martin Keown had been at each other's throats the whole game. And Van Nistelrooy won this penalty, took it, just smashed it against the crossbar. And Keown, the first thing he does is run straight up to Ruud van Nistelrooy and just jeer, laugh, give abuse in his face. And it's that thing of, it clearly is reflective of what's going on in the stands. You know, the pantomime stuff sort of happening, and you kind of just expect the players to just live with it and to just deal with it. But actually what you can tell, there are certain moments where the players get too wound up as well, and they're sort of almost mimicking the behaviour of the fans. And actually, like, part of us as fans, like, that's what we want. Like, when we're cheering to rally them, we want them to get better, to run harder, to run faster, to go into tackles. We want them to do that. We want a response from what we're doing. But when that becomes a bit unsavoury, when that becomes a bit nasty, that's when you start to see it play out on the pitch. And the fans are okay because, you know, we're segregated. You know, the away fans and the home fans are not next to each other. When they are, that's when you get the issues that nobody likes to see. And I'm sure we'll talk about football violence in a future episode. But I think here, like, this is just a really interesting point of, like, how do we hold that thing in tension of just the drama of a game of, yes, when we're playing another team, we don't want them to win. We want to win. If they're our rivals and if there's a backstory, we want that team to lose even more, or we want that player to suffer even more. We've talked a lot on this podcast about how just reminding ourselves that these other people are humans. And I think that we could say that point again. I actually think that one of the interesting things is reminding ourselves of our own personal responsibility. Doesn't matter about that other person. I am convinced that if you showed me a video of me in the stands at certain games, I'm convinced there are moments where I would be a bit embarrassed about my own behaviour. Do you know what I mean? You know,
sure,
I'm not a hooligan or
But that's
anything.
the thing. Football is such a drama that we get caught up in all the emotion.
Yeah.
Right. And we are called as Christians to be set apart from the world and from behaviour around us that is unsavoury. And it's hard to do that, right? When you're all caught up in that. Maybe you're in the Everton home end on Saturday and Gordon misses that penalty. Like, you are going to celebrate, of course you are, but hurling abuse, like, we're not called to do that. We have this personal responsibility to not do that and to build people up and to encourage people.
And let's not be daft about this. Like, you know, football fans, of course they're gonna give him some stick.
Yeah.
Because that, like you said, that's part of the theatre of the game. But there's a line somewhere, and I don't know where it is.
Yeah.
But there's a distinct line somewhere where somebody and I can only tell you that when I'm in a crowd, but I can see somebody doing something or saying something or directing something at a player, and I can go, that's not a line I'm willing to cross.
Yeah.
And I think we just have our own personal responsibilities to not let ourselves get carried away with the emotions.
Absolutely, yeah. Say you're at a Stoke game,
Okay.
and I don't know who you're playing. Let's say West Brom.
Okay.
They score an absolute worldie.
Yeah.
Are you applauding?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, very genuinely, I will, a good save, an outstanding goal. Yeah, I would. Not many people, not many other people.
But I think that's an opportunity to then stand out a bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's hard because they're not going to hear you. They're not going to look up and say, "Oh, Ed's encouraging me." But look, we're called to be different.
And I think so much of it as well, like when you're talking about abusing players and whatnot, hurling abuse at players. So much of it as well, it goes beyond shouting about that player and that particular performance. If, an opposition player comes steaming in with an awful tackle, like you were talking about your dad booing Joey Barton a few weeks ago, again, is it right to say what you think? Obviously, I'm not condoning swearing or anything like that, but I think there's directing something at that player for some foul behaviour or whatever it may be. But then there's using any kind of discriminatory language, which obviously we are wholeheartedly against. Any kind of personal attack, I think you have to just sort of go, okay, well, that's completely out. That can never be excused. But there is emotions in the game, and so you can't sit there and clap like you're at the Masters. That's what football's about. It's about the emotion of it. And sometimes we can just let ourselves get carried away with it a little bit.
100%.
All we can do as people, and particularly as people of faith, all we can do is control our own behaviour. Obviously, we want to have an influence on those around us. Obviously, we would love everybody to, be loving and kind and thoughtful and all that. The first thing that we've got to do, as it says in the Gospels, where Christ talks about taking the plank out of your own eye before you remove the speck of brothers. I think that's what we've got to do first. Is first of all, can we control our own emotions at football matches? Some days, some games it's easier than others. And then hopefully at some point down the line, people can sort of glean something from that and can also learn to do the same thing. It's interesting. I'm now at the stage where I'm taking my daughter to football. She's 7 and she loves going to football games. But I am definitely more aware of my behaviour because I know that there's a 7-year-old watching me like a hawk, copying my behaviour.
Yeah.
So I think maybe we all need to just imagine.
We should all imagine we have a child.
We have a child watching us.
It's a good point, though.
Yeah, definitely.
One final thing from the weekend I just wanted to bring up. Did you see Sunderland against Leeds on Friday night?
No, I missed that one. It was my wife's birthday, Joe.
Oh, well, you can't be watching Sunderland Leeds on your wife's birthday.
that would feel a bit. Sorry, it's work, darling.
Sunderland are top. So Leeds were leading 2-1 in this game, actually. And 6 minutes added time. Comes to the very last minute, and Sunderland play a ball forwards, looking like it's safely nestling into Ilan Mellier's arms, the Leeds keeper. Suddenly, it slips right past him into the net.
Yeah.
Last minute equaliser. Absolute goalkeeper howler.
I did see this, and I felt quite sorry for him because watching it a couple of times, it sort of looks like it maybe takes a bobble or a spin away from him. I know maybe I'm just...
You're giving him some excuses here.
I am. I don't know. The thing is, I'm absolutely obsessed with this. You know I love a goalkeeper.
I know you do.
I love a goalkeeper. And I think there's a really great podcast that is not ours and it's not by UCB.
What?
And I can't believe I'm recommending it. But there's a podcast called 99% Invisible, and they did an episode 374, called Unsure Footing. And it's all about how amazing the back pass rule is.
Okay.
And basically how over the course of about 20 years, the back pass rule has changed the way that football is played. And it's basically why we see your sweeper keepers now is because of that rule and the evolution in the game. I would wholeheartedly recommend that people go and listen to it. It's great. But interestingly, did you know that we're in the third great age of goalkeeper bloopers, Joe?
I didn't know that.
We are the third great age.
I knew we were at least on to the second.
No, we're in the third. So I've done a lot of research into this, Joe. So the first great age of goalkeeper bloopers was the early 90s when they brought the back pass rule in 1992. And basically keepers just struggled to know what to do. And there was loads of panicking, keepers literally just not knowing what to do. And so they learnt how to basically just hoof the ball down the pitch because they could pick the ball up.
Yeah, in the past, you could just fire it back at your own keeper.
You could fire it back at your own keeper. And so they're trying to control these hospital balls. And eventually the defenders learnt how to roll it into them, and the keepers just learnt how to launch it. Yeah, launch it upfield. Then you had the second great age of goalkeeper bloopers, which was the late 90s, early 2000s.
Okay.
The ball started to change, so strikers would hit it and it would move in the air, but you also still had horrible pitches. So
bubbles.
You would get the Stan Collymore goal against Tim Flowers. The big one. Massimo Taibbi, although that definitely can't be blamed on the pitch. That was just shocking goalkeeping. And then the current great age of goalkeeper bloopers is sort of from the late 2010s to now, which is a change in tactic to include sweeper keepers. And you've basically got loads of keepers who've been left behind because they don't have the ability to play with the ball at their feet. And, you know, there's keepers that would have been Premier League goalkeepers that are playing in the Championship now. You only have to look at Ramsdale, who should still by rights be in the Arsenal team because he was a goalkeeper in form and was inexplicably dropped because he couldn't use his feet.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Being a good goalkeeper now isn't about saving things.
No.
I don't know how to phrase it. Saving goals.
Shot stopper.
Yeah, you don't have. It's not enough just to be a shot stopper, to be a penalty saveman. You have to be good at everything. You almost have to be a better footballer than some defenders.
Yeah. But touching on goalkeeper howlers, that one for Meslier was a bad one. And obviously there are some that you just can't legislate for and always just going to happen anyway. My favourite was Ian Walker for Leicester against Bolton.
I do remember this one.
Yeah, for those of you who can't remember, the only way I can describe it is he sort of fumbles a ball that's coming at him. And you think that would be the error. You know, striker nips in and scores the rebound. But he fumbles the ball, and then as he tries to grab it back, he throws it under his own legs and into the net. And everybody at this point assumes he's picked the ball up and has turned away back to the centre spot, and they're sort of moving away, and the ball's actually gone in, and nobody really knows. It's such an anticlimax. It's fantastic. So go
just
and
a bit awkward, isn't it?
Very awkward.
Yeah, my favourite ones are, you know, when a goalkeeper catches it, you think it's safely in the breadbasket, and it just slips out over them.
Good.
I remember it happened to Roy Carroll against the Pedro Mendes shot from quite far out.
Yeah.
And he just kind of spills it. It's not actually given as a goal, even though it's
that was the one that was over the line, and he sort of hooked it back.
Hooked it back.
Yeah, Schmeichel did one of those back in the day as well. There's the Shea Given one. That was the one where he picked the ball up, and then as the players are jogging away, he throws it on the floor, and he didn't realise that there was a striker behind him who just runs around, nicks the ball, and puts it in the empty net. Fantastic stuff.
So, Ed, it's come to that time.
Yes.
You've had enough time now to have a think, and probably a bit too much.
Probably a bit too long to think
so
about it.
I'm expecting a correct answer to this week's trivia question. Which defender won the most aerial duels in the Premier League last season?
My initial thinking was Mark Gahey.
Okay.
And I think that's still a good guess. I've had another one. I think I'm going to do a deal or no deal and swap.
Wow.
I know, and I'm really hoping...
This is a huge moment.
I'm really hoping it doesn't turn out to be Mark Gahey, but I'm going to change it. Similar vein of thinking, centre-back for a team that's under the cosh a lot.
Okay.
But this time I'm going with Everton, and I'm going with James Tarkowski.
You don't think it's going to be a double Dan Burn?
No, I don't think it's... If it's a double Dan Burn, I'm going to be livid.
Yeah.
I'm locking in James Tarkowski.
He's only got it right.
Yes!
Gettin!
Come on! He's finally got one.
That is huge for you. Have you been doing some Googling while we've been talking?
No, absolutely not. No.
I saw you busy on that keyboard.
No, James Tarkowski came to me while I was chatting about Mark Gahey.
What did he say?
What? No.
He said it was me.
He said it was me, yes.
He won the most aerial duels last season. The season before, he was second. And the season before that, he was second as well, behind Chris Wood of Newcastle.
Yeah, good.
Well, that's huge for you.
It's massive. 4-2.
4-2.
I'm back in it, sort of. It's the quiz equivalent of picking the ball up and running back to the halfway line.
You're very much running back with the ball.
With sort of a sarcastic applause from my own fans.
I'd say it's probably 82 minutes on the clock. You pulled one back to 4-2.
Yeah, good.
And you're like, I probably should carry the ball back, but it's not looking like
just to show willing. Exactly. Well, thank you so much for listening to The Big Man Up Top. If you want to get in touch with the show, please ping us an email to podcasts@ucb.co.uk. Please follow, subscribe, give us good reviews, all that lovely stuff. Please help us get the word out. And if you've enjoyed this, tell your mates. Also, a huge thank you to our producer, Anthony, for all his hard work behind the scenes. And there will be a new episode next Tuesday, won't there, Joe?
There will.
There will. See you next week.
See you then.